Yo, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy Big Dom here to talk some more about some boxing. I think on this video, I want to dive into the young man, Brian Norman Jr. First of all, I just want to say big shout out for him to going over to Japan and handling business against Jin Sasaki. A lot of you guys are just figuring out about Brian Norman Jr., but I am a resident of Atlanta, so we've kind of been knowing about this guy for quite a while, and I'm so glad to see him finally getting some of his credit that he deserves. He's a highly skilled fighter, in my opinion. I think Atlanta is one of those cities that doesn't get as much notoriety in boxing in modern day. Because of course we have the Vander Holyfields and a few other guys, but ideally in modern history, I don't think Atlanta is taken as seriously as cities like Philadelphia, New York, LA. So ideally, I'm very happy to see Brian Norman Jr. Putting himself on the map by going out and handling business. Man, that was a devastating knockout that he put on old Jin Sasaki. I just heard the news that Jin Sasaki doesn't even remember the knockout, and they said he can't remember, the last 6 months of his life. So I'm actually sending up some prayers for old Jin Sasaki. As I say, boxing isn't a game. Every time you get into that ring, you literally putting your life on the line. So I'm not like a lot of other boxing fans that talk all big and laugh at guys when they get knocked out and different things like that, because we have seen moments where guys literally either don't get up or they succumb to certain injuries in the boxing ring. So sending out a lot of prayers to Jin Sasaki and his family to hopefully that he gets back to 100. But I think that, left hook from Brian Norman Jr. To put him down may be knockout of the year candidate. Jin Sasaki did not move when he got put down. And I think this just goes to show the level that Brian Norman Jr. is on. So I want you guys to really pay attention to this guy. I'm rooting for him to, get some big fights, because I think he can hold his own with the best of them. And I think if you guys stay tuned, you guys really will see some good fights from him. I know a lot of people wanted to see him fight Jaron Boots Ennis, which is a whole nother story, man. I'm kind of disappointed to see Jaron Ennis move up the day before Brian Norman Jr.'s fight with Jin Sasaki. I'm not quick to call somebody a duck, but I will say it does kind of look funny in the light. I know a lot of you guys are pretty big on Jaron Ennis, and I definitely recognize the talent, the speed, the power. He's one of those guys that, he seems to have it all. But at the same time, I'm probably not as high on Jaron Ennis as a lot of you guys. Once again, I recognize the talent, but boxing is a very much of a what have you done for me lately sport. And I think with Jaron Ennis, until you prove it in the ring, I know they talk about, how dynamic he is in the gym and, the things he does behind the scenes. But to me, that's just kind of like, I don't know if you guys have ever played football where you have that guy that's, doing phenomenal stuff in practice, but then when the big lights are on, it's the real game. They just don't have that same effect. That's kind of the energy I get from Jaron Ennis. So I am still waiting on him to actually fight somebody of substance, to show the skill level that he has. And I think Brian Norman was that guy that would literally pull everything that Boots had out. So to see Boots move up to 154, as soon as Brian Norman is, on the big stage and ready to fight him, it's kind of disappointing. But, he says he was having trouble making the weight. And one thing I do like to see is fighters be 100% at the weight that they're at to put on the best fight. So if Jaron Ennis says that, he was having a hard time making 147, then that's what we'll go with. But I do kind of find it funny that, a few months earlier in some interviews that Jaron Ennis said that, he was still pretty easily making 147. So it kind of just gives a little bit of pause to me when he all of a sudden moves up to 154 solidly. And, it kind of makes it look like he's ducking Brian Norman Jr. So, it is what it is now. But I think Brian Norman Jr. is definitely going to be the man at 147. I think he has all the tools to, clear that division out. And I'm ready to see him in some big fights because I think he's that guy that you guys are looking for to establish 147 as, kind of one of the best divisions in boxing historically. So we'll see. I also have been seeing Devin Haney and Bill Haney going back and forth with Brian Norman Jr. And I will say, I know a lot of you guys don't necessarily like Devin Haney for one reason or another, but I don't really have an issue with Devin Haney inside the ring. I think that he is a very good boxer. He has a high boxing skill level. And with boxing being a sport, I think Devin Haney is one of those guys that can highlight when he's at his best, the great parts of boxing, the hit, the not get hit. Devin Haney is still a very young man also. I know he's had some setbacks with the Ryan Garcia fight, which I'm just not a Ryan Garcia fan. I think he's more of an act than serious about boxing, and that's just what he's shown me. But I do not like anybody that uses PEDs. I think, once again, as I said earlier in this fight, like in this video, that boxing isn't a game. Like, when you step in that ring, you're putting your life on the line. So to come in with any advantages over your opponent is just, it doesn't show high morale for me. We agreed to come in at a certain weight. We agreed that we'll both stay clean and it'll be a good, clean fight. And then you come in doing sucker stuff like that. It's just something I never can respect. So that's why I'm not too high on Ryan Garcia out of many other reasons, but we'll just keep it there. But ideally, going back to Bill Haney and Devin Haney, basically calling out Brian Norman Jr. And I'm just gonna go on record and say, like, I don't think this is the fight for Devin Haney. I think Devin Haney would have to fight a perfect fight to even remotely have a chance at beating Brian Norman Jr. Brian Norman Jr. is young. He's athletic. He's, he has power in both hands, and he brings that kryptonite that Devin Haney just doesn't want to see, which is that left hook. The left hook is what, basically decimated Jin Sasaki. And I think Brian Norman just has bricks in his hands, and I don't think Devin Haney could go a whole fight without being touched by Brian Norman. So I'd be happy to see that fight just to see what it looks like, because I do think that Brian Norman Jr. has had issues with just pure boxers in the past. But once again, he's such a young kid that I think that he's literally gotten better and better at every fight. So what do you guys think? Do you guys want to see that Brian Norman versus Devin Haney fight? Personally, I do, because I think it's time for Brian Norman Jr. to be able to show his skill set on the biggest stage. But I don't know if it's the right move for Devin Haney right now. I find it funny that Bill Haney talks a lot more than his son, but his son is the one that has to get in that ring and fight. I didn't agree with them taking the Ryan Garcia fight, with Ryan Garcia coming in overweight and then getting popped for a pass also. But they said money talks, so I just don't know, man. I'd rather Devin Haney, for the safety of his career, to fight like a Teofimo, which would be still a dangerous fight, but I just think Brian Norman Jr. is different. Once again, we'll see. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Once again, like, subscribe. And once again, I always tell people I'll return the favor if I can. So if I see you subscribe to me, I'll do the same for you. And hey, let's talk about some boxing in the comments. All right, y'all have a good day.